We're back, and we're back with Kurapika from Factor DAO. Good day, sir. It's good to have you back. How are you doing?
Good day, good day, good day. Thank you so much for having us. Very excited for today.
Great. I wanted to, obviously we had a great chat initially when you guys, in terms of Factor DAO and, where you guys were at the time was that you were about to start you're about to start a raise, you're going to do a public sale. There was this huge value proposition. It's been over a month now. It's been about 5 weeks. We're revisiting because it's actually been 6 weeks. We're revisiting because you guys had a very successful public raise on Arbitrum with the Camelot guys. Completely smashed it out the park. Congratulations on that. It was really cool to see, all the effort and all the energy and all this planning that went into this raise, and you guys really did execute exceptionally. So congratulations on that, and it's great to have you back.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's been hectic yet exciting few months, I guess, gearing up and finalizing the public sale, which in terms of the project perspective, was hugely successful because what a startup or a technology innovation needs most is resources. And what it allows us now to do is to not only own the liquidity, which is also amazing, we actually have solid runway to really build this somewhat ambitious yet very viable technology to really bring an impact and, I guess, disrupt DeFi in a sense.
So
So
I
yeah,
think
we're very excited. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I actually cut you short and we just got a little bit of a delay there. I just wanted to ask you, in terms of, obviously looking back now and reflecting upon, this journey that you guys have traveled. I mean, what were kind of like the biggest challenges that you met along the way in terms of obviously presenting a product that would be perceived as being viable? I mean, we know that it's viable, but how did you do it in terms of like essentially taking an idea, presenting it to, the greater crypto community, and then executing on that raise? Because the raise was basically a confirmation of, listen, guys, we acknowledge what it is that your idea is, and we are willing to back it. What was the biggest challenge or the biggest challenges that you would say you encountered along the way in order to get that across the line?
That's a wonderful question. First of all, I can say personally, I'm not sure. So for the ones who didn't listen to the other interview, so basically my co-founder Shortco and I been working on this for months and months on end. Now it's almost 10 months in the making. Now for the first 6 to, let's say, 7 months, we had no traction at all. We're not talking about a raise. We're not just talking about really delivering what we had as an idea, which we kept on working and fine tuning. And the most, I guess, difficult challenge was actually just communicating it, because we spoke with different incubators and different venture capitals and partners to really just test the idea. And we got great validations, but you still need to communicate it to the masses. You need to translate an idea into something digestible that you can just put on whatever, crypto Twitter or on a blog, and whoever it is that's going to read it will understand what your goals are, what the vision is, and that it's really executionable and provides a solution to the market. And I'm glad to say that, again, after a very hectic period of, like, let's say, a few months, that we geared up towards the public sale and the launch, it seems that we lucked out in terms of the team, and we have a great communication team and a great business develop team. Again, aside from the development side, we'll touch about it in a few, but they were able to really help us communicate it forward and really deliver this general belief in what Factor is going to bring to the table. And obviously, we're not talking about what will be version number 1 or what will be the features that will be added later on in the next coming months. We're looking at what Factor can do to actually affect DeFi as a whole and hopefully reach out to further sectors other than DeFi as well.
So thanks for that. I mean, obviously there are those really important elements that you brought into, so if you had to like write a playbook in terms of what does it take to run a successful project or to essentially launch a successful project. I mean, obviously the team is the most important thing. You touched on it in the first interview that we did together, and it's just really cool for me to listen to you validate that once again. It's kind of like, I acknowledge this team that I've got behind me, and how we've put this thing together. And it's great to see that, you had that assumption before, you've now executed, and it's kind of like, okay, cool. We're essentially going into chapter 2 of this story, and I've got a team. I know I can rely on them. We've been through, a bit of pain and obviously a whole lot of success together. Now we get to build this thing. So I want to now, just first of all, before we get into kind of like the real gems of what it is that I believe that you guys have kind of uncovered here, is, can you just tell us, just for the sake of any of the listeners who aren't aware and who haven't listened to the first interview, what exactly is Factor DAO embarking on doing, and what problems are you guys looking at solving?
I'll actually take you on a journey, because first of all, when we started, again, 10 months ago, we first looked at the more generalized instruments that are existing in TradFi, but we couldn't really find good solutions for them. It started off with tokenized baskets, obviously derivatives, although derivatives are now catching fire and it's awesome. And through the evolvement of really building the project, because an idea is awesome, right? You can come up with the most beautiful idea ever at night, and before you even get to execute it, you need to model it. And this modeling process, whether it's financial modeling, architecture side in terms of technology, you need to put the time and really do a lot of mistakes and do a lot of adjustments until you find a formula where you can actually deliver upon. And I can now proudly say that Factor is basically what we're looking at. It is this unique abstraction platform where we actually utilize our infrastructure to integrate to basically any offering that DeFi can have, preferably multiple protocols on the same offering, whether it's preps, options, spot positions, yield pools, all of these. So we collect them in the back end, and this is very important. We'll get to it in a second. We collect them in the back end, in the infrastructure level, and deliver it as what we now call the front end of DeFi. So you go into Factor, you can either create an instrument, and an instrument could be a yield pool, a basket, a derivative protocol. You can actually build a whole protocol on top of Factor, just because, again, it utilizes all the DeFi capabilities that are accessed either from Factor or from the integrations that we have partnered with. And then you are building your own strategy. From the capital side, so let's say I just want to get exposure and generate yield, I can now go and get this very filtered approach of expert in their fields, again, strategists that will be able to implement their own thinkings regarding what would be profitable. And me as someone with capital can just go in, see the different risk profiles, and choose my own flavor. And this is like the core thing here, is to simplify DeFi. Simplify it for the creators, so you can actually go with a new platform and create the strategies and protocols. And for the ones that are more of the market participants, this is the toughest job, right? To find the most lucrative returns, or that will fit your risk profile, of course. And this is what we aim to do with Discover, which is the place where the vaults appear. Instead of creating them, this is the strategist's job. The market participants go to the Discover element to find the right strategy for them.
Okay, great. So, I mean, that was the idea. Now you get to raise a whole lot of money to actually put all of this in place. And I'm obviously really pleased to say that that's exactly what it is that you guys have done. And now, just looking at your roadmap, I know that there's a vault that I think your vaults, have you got vaults that are currently about to go online? Can you just speak to us about that and what it
Mhm.
involves?
Oh, yeah. So first of all, just in terms, I guess we can finalize the public sale or the raise element by saying this runway or this resource to actually go and implement this complex infrastructure, it requires a lot. And we're very lucky to have a team. By the way, we're already 14 members, and they require compensation, but not just because they want to get all filled with money in their pockets. It's just because we
Yeah.
now have this 2-year period where we can actually focus on the technology and start delivering. And when I say start delivering, that's the interesting part, because lots of the people say, well, Factor doesn't have a product yet. What's going on? And the fact is that we've audited the vaults even before the public sale, and the infrastructure side itself was done. But in order to really deliver something that is more than just a basic vault, which doesn't really innovate of anything, we are focusing on integrating and prioritizing all the vault partner strategies and the integration. So I can share that we've already integrated with Curve, with Aave, with GLP, with VLP, GMX and Vela, and Lira as well. We are working and basically implementing integrations daily. And what it means is that within each integration that is being added, there's a more flexible array of vaults that can be created. So right now, we are geared up to launch our first vaults. And instead of just launching one vault, like we basically compromised, we said we can delay this launch in a week or so, first of all, to make the security elements and everything is connected properly. And secondly, we just launched this first experimental vault, but actually come up with an array of all the integrations that we'll be able to utilize. So we were super excited about that, and this will basically start the completion not only on phase 1, where we allow the vaults to appear, but phase 2, which includes partner vaults. So any one of our 20 plus partners that would want to implement their strategies, and I'll be able to elaborate on it later on.
So, I mean, I think what's really important around understanding the whole concept around a vault and the strategy around that is to understand what you mean by that. You know, and it's kind of like it's easy
Mhm.
so can you just talk us through what you would deem a strategy within one of the vaults that you guys have set up?
Mhm.
Just a simple example
Perfect.
would really help. Yeah.
Let's let's uh let's explain me like I'm 5-it. Okay. So basically,
Yeah.
it's very simple. So I use like big words like infrastructure and DeFi strategies, but at the end of the day, we're looking at two sides of the coin. We have
Yeah.
uh, builders, strategists, however you want to call them, people that know how to implement their financial knowledge or their research knowledge. So they go into Factor and they choose first of all the assets that they want to implement. And assets could be wrapped Ethereum, it could be Factor, it could be in the future even an NFT or a real world asset. Again, all supported by the ERC20 system or 1155. And basically, what it allows you is to decide how you feel that the best way of yield generation can be implemented in a vault. And practically speaking, you can either, let's say you're very good at researching and you decided that these 5 projects that you identified are really going to nail it next bull market. So you wrap them up in a basket, and now I'm, as a market participant, can just get exposure to it in one click instead of the need to A, do the research myself, and B, to really go and buy all these different tokens from the different providers. Sometimes it's traded on different dexes. And this is a tokenized basket. So I just had a very good um, choice to make where I chose the composite and now I'm offering it to everyone. But it's really getting interesting when you go beyond just choosing a composite, and really implementing the DeFi primitives that all the other protocols have been working on for years and years, and we'll just see more innovations on that. So instead of just looking at this choice, let's say I know that I'm really supportive of Ethereum, and I really want to have a strategy that is based on Ethereum. I can implement some safeguards in order to make sure that maybe if I'm wrong, so whoever gets exposure to that vault or strategy, whatever you want to call it, is more protected, and this is called hedging. So I can maybe choose an inverted asset, something that is moving naturally in an opposite direction than Ethereum. We know, for example, that in traditional markets, gold is many times being used to hedge the market against stocks. So some hedge fund will buy stocks and will hedge it by buying more gold. So obviously, by the fact that they bought gold, they have less exposure to the assets that they believe in. But in the case they are wrong, it's now being hedged and gold is rising. So same thing with hedge positions in crypto. So there's something called delta neutral strategies. And this means we basically, and when I say we, is again not Factor. Factor is not, we're not strategists, we're not claiming to be such. We are helping all the different protocols and individuals and funds to implement their financial knowledge and their DeFi savviness into products, basically. So a strategy is a financial product by the end of the day. It could be hedged, it could be leveraged, like with preps. It could be just a more simplified composite or an index in case you want to track a certain sector. But at the end of the day, it's any kind of financial product that someone with the expertise wants to create and someone with the capital wants to get exposure to. And I guess this will sum it up.
Brilliant. That's actually such a good summary. Thank you, Kurapika. I think you really did touch on, the very important aspects of independence within the protocol. So I can come into a decentralized protocol. I can set up a vault with whatever strategy that it might be. And the beautiful thing about it is that you actually get to attract all these partners. So I know that you made some mention around a number of these partners, well-known names, obviously on the Arbitrum ecosystem. Do you have any idea what strategies they are looking to employ, or is that kind of like a little bit of a question mark at the moment, and we'll have to just wait and see how that kind of plays out?
That's a great one. So let me start by saying, like, a lot of the times, like when protocols announce partnerships, right? There's like this rush for co-marketing. Let's say we put our logos up, and now everyone is happy, and the coins can pump. This is not the case, and this is not the case not just because we're not supportive of this idea, but because Factor is based on these integrations. So every time we announce on someone, and there's a full list on our documents and the website, I can touch on a few in a second. The idea here is to have almost every partnership as a two-sided thing. So first, it's the integration side. Let's say you're a DeFi protocol that offers a certain capability. We, Factor, we'd want to integrate into that to enhance the experience of the experts, like the strategy creators. So they will have more options and more features to choose from when they create the complex strategies. But another side of it, and this is leading to your question, is the vault partners, which almost naturally, I think 90 or 95% of them are both of them. There are integration partners, but there are also vault partners. And a vault partner is a very interesting way for a protocol to utilize their DeFi expertise together with identifying their revenue stream. So what it means is that instead of letting just general DeFi strategies come over to Factor and create strategies on the protocol native token or native primitive, they will be able to provide them themselves. So we just released about a week ago, we sent them all a form that basically collects all the different strategies that they aim to implement. It could start off by a more simple, let's say, ETH long, which is betting on Ethereum to go and be successful price-wise, but also with obviously different hedging that are embedded. I can't give specific examples, obviously, because they haven't launched yet, and we don't want anyone to front-run the partner strategies. But we can say we have already collected more than 20, some of them from very prominent both people and protocol. I can share actually because we hosted a sushi swap to our veFactor podcast, and their lead and core developer said that they're basically now looking into creating different strategies that are sushi based. So it's not just the integration to sushi that will enhance the experience for the Factor users, but actually having sushi creating and implementing a strategy that will then enable them to diversify their revenue stream, right? Because it's not related to their product directly. It's not related to their liquidity directly. It's just another element that they can harness by the fact that they are very much savvy in the DeFi space and utilize it in order and basically translate it into a strategy that again now can go and publish on Factor.
Wow, that's really cool. So I mean, essentially, what you're affording protocols the opportunity to do, and then also individuals to do, is to essentially capture liquidity in order to obviously put strategies in place that could potentially earn stakers. I assume that this would be through a staking mechanism. Is that correct? Can you just talk about the mechanics of how this whole thing works, kind of like on a granular level?
So how am I getting exposure to a vault, basically?
Correct. Yes. So I mean,
did I understand your question correctly? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah. Sorry. The reason why the question isn't clear is because I'm also a little bit unclear as to, how to break it down. So it's like, excuse me. So it's essentially we create a strategy around whatever instrument it is, whether it's an ETH long for argument's sake. So once we've done that, how do I, as a third party, come in and benefit off the back of that vault and that strategy that's been put in place? What is the mechanism with which I can then expose myself to that investment, essentially?
Beautiful. So first of all, let's say we're now the creator, right? This is the first entity that uses the second entity, Factor, in order to create its strategy. So you chose ETH long, you decided to maybe stake it as a part of the strategy. Some of it maybe is more liquid and the other side is locked in order to generate yield. So what practically is happening when you're creating the vault is that you deposit USDC, basically. It doesn't matter what kind of strategy you want to implement. We are connected to a router and some DEX aggregators in order to allow a simplified creation. So even if you chose 20 different assets, what happens in the back end is that the input asset is being translated into the composite you chose. So it will go to a DEX or a different pool and will convert into the actual assets that needs to be deposited into the vault, because it's very important. We're not creating synthetics here. These are actually, like, the actual liquidity is being deposited into the vault. So now I'm, as the one, let's say the third party that wants to get exposure to that, I'll be able to again go with whatever asset I have in my wallet. Right now we're limiting it to USDC just to simplify the initial process. So I'm coming with USDC. I want to have exposure to that said vault, the ETH long, with some staking improvements. And what I'm doing is that I'm depositing the USDC. It's being converted to the backend assets. And I'm now getting a share proportionate to the amount I have invested. I'm getting a share of that vault represented as an ERC20, which is also, by the way, is liquid, meaning you can use it as collateral. You can create another instrument with it. It's basically a composable infrastructure. So now this represents my share of the vault. And if the vault is profitable, the price of the share increases, which I can always mint back and reclaim basically as USDC.
Okay, that's brilliant. So, and it sets up perfectly for the next question, and that is, kind of like, in many ways, I see this as almost being like one of the first steps in your journey is, FCTR. So obviously taking the Factor token, creating a staking mechanism. I'd really like to hear, a little bit more about that, the motivation. I mean, I think I've got a good idea as to what the motivation is, but just talk us through that. And I know that that's active at the moment, and what the future is of that, and how you guys are planning to implement that into your overall strategy in terms of the protocol itself.
Love it. First of all, we did publish a big thread about why we went with veFactor, but let me give you a quick summary. So first of all, and most importantly, Factor is a DAO. We are in the midst of implementing the different governance layers, but in the end of the day, this is going to be a full-blown DAO, not just any DAO, but we actually worked, even not related to this project, but in the past 2 years, on a hyperstructure of sub-DAOs that will be able to create these sub-entities that either have their own goals, whether it's research, risk, analysis, transparency, development of strategies, or development of the architecture itself. All of these can work independently by a budget that is determined by the main DAO. And all of this governance mechanism needs to be controlled somehow. Now, you could do it with Factor, right? But the problem here is what is called like the governance attacks, basically. So anyone could, instead of waiting for his turn to go to this DeFi protocol, do a flash loan and get, I don't know, 40 million Factor based on that flash loan that he's planning to give back in a second. He will go in and affect the governance. And governance is everything in DAOs, right? You can basically empty a treasury if you hold enough tokens. So he would go do that and return his flash loan. It happened many times. It happened just around a year ago for a protocol called Beans, and they emptied, I think, 180 million from the treasury. And the reason why we chose veFactor.
Yeah, I remember that.
It's a terrible story. Yeah, and it's sad, right? Because basically it's just a mechanism that was taken advantage of. So veFactor prevents that because you need to lock your tokens. You are getting veFactor, which are also decaying, by the way, meaning your power doesn't last forever. You always need to affect the governance and get more involved in the protocol in order to maintain this veFactor position. Now, veFactor is used, as we said, for voting on the different budgeting for the sub-DAOs, for the direction of the main DAO, and any other implementations that they want to have. Moreover, and this is why we launched staking right now, is first for everyone to start to accumulate this governance element. But the other side of it is what is now being very prominent as a narrative is real yield, right? Which is de facto it's revenue that is being shared. And this is something that was very, it's like a pillar for what we want to do, because lots of the protocols in DeFi until now, so they have staking programs, whether they are governance related or not, they are emitting the native token. And by emitting the native token, you're there's no other way. You're diluting the market cap and the holders of the ones that you're of your native token holders. So you're just creating inflation for incentivization of staking. So you haven't solved much. And this is the reason why, as a principle, we don't offer something like an APY on the stake factor, because once the first votes are getting started and they start generate TVL, this immediately translates into revenue because of the fee structure, because of how Factor works, because of the network of protocols and partners we have that will very eager to distribute it. TVL will be built. And once TVL is built, immediately it emits 50% of all fees to the stakers. So you end up with stable coin emission to the stakers instead of creating mass inflation on your token. So this was something that is very important for us. So if I want to sum it up, it's basically an anti-whale mechanism, including the decaying, the locking, etc., and the revenue share that is not based on internal dilution.
And then obviously, I know that you guys created a wonderful thread, which I will link in this interview, in terms of the future utilities. I mean, I'm very interested in that because you see, you love to set yourselves up for like, okay, well, we've got a whole lot of work to do. We'll do it, but then we'll just give ourselves more work to do in terms of what the future holds. So, well done. So, in terms of the future,
I love it. No, I love it.
Yeah. So, how do you actually bring? You know, obviously, you've got these different components at the moment where you got the real yield aspect, you got the governance sorted out, you got the time decay dynamics sorted out, and what I like about it is you guys termed it as quitting. Is still an option. It's kind of like, well, it doesn't mean because you've locked that you're now kind of stuck. You get to make a call around what your future holds in this ecosystem, in this strategy that you've adopted. What do those future utilities entail, and are they kind of like encompassing all of the above that you guys have put in place already, or is it something completely new that you're thinking of doing?
Oh yeah, so actually it's pretty exciting because we just had this week a chat about. So obviously there's veFactor, right? And veFactor, beyond the revenue, it affects the governance. So it could be anything from vault composes to token swap that the treasury wants to do, and how to implement whatever features or major that Factor would want to do in the future. This is fully in the hands of the holders. But there's another element here because there's Factor. Factor is the native token. Yes, you can stake it in order to get veFactor, but we are now working, and as you may be, yes, we're just adding more and more work for ourselves, but we are now working on a quite elaborated economy, like economy. So obviously there's the word tokenomics, and tokenomics is nice because yes, there's staking and there's governance, and it's awesome. But once you can actually create an economy, something that you have, let's say, more than 3 parties that either has that they have a reason to use Factor and they have a reason to receive Factor. I won't share everything again just because it's still in early stages, but you can imagine that a marketplace of, let's say, templates or strategists created by a layer of analysts can help the strategists create more viable and complex strategies without taking the effort. So the strategists can focus on their financial research, while the researchers can bring in more fundamentals on the assets that are being composed or the market itself. So this is just an example of where you can actually start utilizing as a native currency within an ecosystem. There's a lot more to it, which again, I'm sorry that I won't share right now, but stay tuned because it's really exciting. Like, yeah, my my entire windows on my apartment is filled with like crazy looking formulas for that.
Yeah, I mean, there is definitely that air of mad professor in the air with what it is that you guys are doing, and it doesn't surprise me that you say that. And I know that your co-founders along similar lines. I mean, I have chatted to him as well, and it's kind of like, it's interesting because I think the very essence of what it is that you guys are building at the moment is that it's actually quite simple and straightforward. At the same time, it is highly complex in order to arrive. I mean, I know it sounds crazy to put it that way, but I think that's what you guys have done, is that it's like we have this whole idea around middleware, and we've got the traditional finance world, we got the DeFi world. Now, how do we bridge the two? I mean, I actually was quite fortunate to interview Darren Camus from IPO, and they're obviously doing the fixed interest rates idea, taking traditional finance, bringing it into DeFi. And I see a synergy between what it is that they're doing and what you guys are doing, just purely because there needs to be some kind of stability within this highly volatile environment. And I think this is like one of those first steps that need to be taken, right? So let's bring in, this ideology from traditional finance into DeFi. But one of the biggest challenges that you guys have at the moment, and you do refer to it in another thread that you put out as part of your product rollout roadmap, which I'll also link in the interview, is essentially, the importance of middleware. Can you just talk about what middleware is and how you guys are essentially tackling that problem at the moment?
Perfect. Yeah. And I really liked what you said, because it sounds counterintuitive, but it's quite simple. We are doing a very complex work in the back end in order to allow practically the front end, or the product, which is Factor, to be as simple as possible, both for the ones that wants to get exposure to strategies or vaults, and for the ones who are creating it. So this is like the major challenge that we are facing. We have solved some of it. Lots will be solved in the next years, but simplification and efficiency and security is the pillars. Like, this is what we aim for, and we'll do a lot of hard work in order to allow it to seem as simple later on to the let's say, to the interface or the user that is interacting with Factor. Now, in terms of the middleware, I mean, there needs to be you mentioned our pool, which is a great example of fixed income and how TradFi elements are being translated into DeFi. And this is something we really repeat on, is the fact that DeFi, which is a very, very, I guess, early stage technology. I mean, hell, we didn't have stable coins and dexes like 4 or 5 years ago. We need to mature this market. And by maturing, we need to lend different techniques and different frameworks from TradFi, and evolve them and translate them into the next stage of DeFi. And this is exactly what we want to do here. So originally we called it asset management, but practically speaking, it's this engagement and liquidity layer that can connect between the liquidity providers, the protocols that are creating the instruments. In TradFi, you can call them either traders, hedge funds, mutual funds. There's many things that can be named in TradFi, but practically speaking, this is all the different DeFi protocols that we're seeing today. So the triangle is being completed by the capital owners, anyone that wants to utilize their assets in order to generate yield. So when we talk about the middleware, we want to connect all of it into one single place for all of these parties to have a seamless experience and a simple exposure and I guess interface to handle it. So a middleware would just be the place where everything is being connected and translated forward.
That's a great way of actually describing it. I mean, I know it's once again, it's like this whole idea that it's really simple on the cold face of it, and it's the same with the word, middleware. It should be self-explanatory, but it's not that easy to achieve, because you're essentially bridging these unfortunate two worlds. I mean, we've seen it in the last 24 hours in terms of what's been happening in the market at the moment. And you have this kind of, like, in my mind, this is the way that I see it, so excuse me whilst I indulge, but it's kind of like this whole thing where there's an opinion around what is happening in the traditional finance world versus what we perceive to be happening in the DeFi world. And there's quite a big difference. Yet instead of us from a DeFi perspective actually just not really getting sucked into this, this fear, this doubt and this uncertainty, we do. And it's crazy, because we've got all the elements that we need to create everything that is essentially required to run an efficient financial system within the DeFi framework. But yet we are still so dependent on what's happening in the traditional finance world. I know that this is kind of like a little bit separate to what it is that Factor is doing at the very core. But I think on a philosophical level, do you think that we'll ever arrive at a place where, protocols like Factor and even your stablecoin providers, your algorithmic stablecoin providers, do you think that we could ever be independent of what the traditional finance world is kind of like holding us to and holding us to ransom? Or do you think that we have to continue navigating with this whole, like, stick your toe in the water first and check the temperature?
Lovely question. Yeah. So basically, are you saying, are we deemed to be cyberpunks forever, or do we have a chance to really flip finance?
I think
first of all, like,
I think it's both.
I believe
questions.
it's the latter.
I think it's both those questions.
I hope it's the latter.
Yes.
I hope it's the latter, and we're working, because if it wasn't, we weren't doing that. But there's lots of different challenges until we can get there. So yes, you were 100% correct. When I look at the frameworks and what the primitives that were built on DeFi until now, and again, it's super young, like 5 years is nothing. And we have a lot of different challenges that are more, okay, you know what, let's look at it this way. Why are there banks, right? Originally, like, why did we create the institution? Created to build trust, because we can trust one another, so we need a place to keep all our money. And actually, one of the biggest problems in DeFi right now, yes, we got into these amazing solutions, and some of them are actually more efficient than in TradFi in terms of the yield, in terms of the actual interactions, but there's still the trust level. Like, what will make the random person in the street to take his thing and deposit it into a DeFi protocol, and again, instead of his bank? And this is trust. And I think one of the things that are now being evolved, and just recently, I guess like a week ago, there was a new EIP for this distributed wallet, where you can actually batch transactions. And you can not only batch transactions, you can keep your wallet safe in case you forgot your phrase key. So it's like a guardian wallet kind of thing. And these type of abilities, and I didn't even know that it was being developed. And once I saw it, I was like, oh wow, could be one of the catalysts to really make what you just described, basically allowing us to go out of this DeFi cave and really cater to the masses. And things like that, like the trust elements. So I am, as an individual who is not DeFi native, who did not play around with hundreds of protocols, but just wants to take capital or money, his salary, and make it bigger because it wants to generate yield. And I'm using this simplified words on purpose, because finance is using like all this bombastic words just to describe pretty simple narratives and processes. So we want, as individuals, to take our capital, our well-earned capital, and hopefully learning from all these big players on Wall Street to really bring more yield, making it more. So DeFi is already doing that in many different facets, and the trust level is getting there too, because we'll be able to create decentralized custodians, we'll be able to create credit scores, we'll be able to create all these missing elements for DeFi to fully evolve into something that could just cater the masses. And I believe in that. I don't know how much time it will take, and I really hope and work towards Factor will be a major facet within it.
Yeah, I actually feel the same way. I think there are obviously a whole lot of challenges. I think at the moment the infrastructure, and obviously from a regulatory perspective, that's like, it's a major thing. But the interesting thing about it is that we do have the tools, like I said, to navigate this thing pretty much independent, and this is what I love about decentralization, what I really appreciate about DAOs, and ideas around DAOs, and how you empower people on an individual level, and obviously on a group level to make the decisions that are best for them. And I think at the end of the day, what I really enjoy about Factor is that it is about that. I think it's just finding those sweet spots, which I'm sure you guys will figure out, and you'll make a whole bunch of mistakes along the way, like anyone would. But I think at the end of the day, if there is this, let's figure out the best way to bridge this divide, then we'll be able to have products that actually benefit people, like you said. It's like, let's take this money that we've worked so hard to earn and put it to use, as opposed to a third party, namely a banker, that takes our money and does the exact same thing. This is what people don't realize about the traditional finance world, is that all that juicy stuff gets taken by the bankers and by the brokers and all those guys, and you left
yes.
And we forget that.
Exactly.
We kind of like,
I mean,
yeah.
Yeah, sorry to cut you off. I just want to piggyback on that and say, like, when I take a taxi, or when I sit like at a restaurant and it's about to close and I have time to speak with a waiter and I teach them Factor, basically. Obviously, I don't use the same words I'm using here because they're not DeFi savvy, but it's as simple as look at your saving account. You're taking your money, you're putting it in a saving account, which in our DeFi perspective, you take liquidity and you lock it and you give it to someone. They play around with it. They give you a measly yield back, and they keep all the profit. And this is obviously a simplified element of what banks are doing. But at the end, it's just a power structure that is not beneficial to the means of production. It's very Marxist of us, but the beautiful thing here is it's that we can actually bring back power to the people. It's not just a cliche. It's not just this dream. It's actually something that's really embedded. We just need to keep improving the infrastructures, keep improving the security of the protocols, and I think it will just be imminent once we actually are able to translate it.
Yeah, I think that's bang on. It's like, and we need to be doing that, when we're speaking to people, because I think it's important. It's part of the education. I mean, that's why we do what it is that we do. I mean, we just happen to, speak to a wider audience, but it's so important in terms of like, kind of like the so-called real world. Like, how are you actually taking your responsibility with your money to the level that you need to in order to get the maximum benefit. And I think that there's too little of those conversations happening. It's about fund managers and it's about brokers who are supposed to be helping you, but they're not really helping you. They're doing the exact opposite. So, obviously we get to see it from kind of like a bird's eye view, and it's really interesting. That's just the way it is at the moment. I wanted to just finish off our chat with the obvious question, like, what is the future hold for you guys now? I mean, what are the kind of like let's look at the medium term goals, and then maybe just touch on the long term goals. What would you like to see, say, by the middle of the year, by the end of the year, in terms of what it is that you guys are doing at the moment?
Perfect. No, lovely. So first of all, I mean, we already have declared publicly what we're going to do in the next, let's say, 6 months, right? So you have the first phase, which was the infrastructure. Most of it is done. Then we have the phase 2, which is taking all the partner integrations and put them into work, which means strategies created by those partners. This is also already the work we elaborated earlier this call. And the third phase would be to fully open up the system in a permissionless way where anyone can go and create the same type of product with the type of integrations that we've been implementing. So this is, I guess, very shortly what Factor holds in the short, medium term. But then comes the question, what's next? And this is where things are getting interesting, because DeFi is like the basis or the fundamental layer of many other sectors and protocols. You can look at GameFi, you can look at NFTs that are now doing this conversion into NFTFi. And at the end of the day, it's just about how to manage funds or how to manage assets. So one facet of Factor is treasury management, right? So you can, as a treasury manager in a DAO, you can go in, tokenize your treasury strategy. Usually it's risks, right? So it's mostly stables and they're utilized in one way or another in order to be efficient yet not be at risk to fully collapse and make the protocol disassemble. So you tokenize that, and other more, I guess, beginner treasury managers can take this strategy, either inspire on it and create their own strategy, or just deposit parts of their treasury in this non-custodial vault. Now, when we look at future items, we said earlier that Factor is the front end of DeFi, but it could be a front end for a lot of the other different elements that will again simplify the process for the ones that want to get access to. So you can imagine things like opening complete marketplaces and protocols on top of Factor. You could imagine what it means to have a full DAO creation process on top of Factor. Again, this is very long term, can't put timelines on it, but in terms of just the logical evolvement of Factor would be to allow as many different elements that are already somewhat supported in the system to just be further simplified. Because Factor right now is saving you the time instead of going these different DeFi protocols. You are investing or you want to create strategies, you need to go to all these different elaborated DeFi protocols in order to provide that. Right now, you go to Factor and you do that in one single room. Now imagine we do the same things that are extending outside of the DeFi world, like DAO management, because again, the hyperstructure that we created for sub-DAOs and the way we are using quadratic voting and funding of different grants and different budgets within those sub-DAOs is something we can then open source and allow anyone to create their own DAO upon it. Because DAOs, I mean, they had their 15 minutes of grace, and then people said, well, it's not efficient, it's not going to work. It's too complicated, it's inefficient. Well, they're right? It was an experiment to begin with, but we're evolving as DAOs, whether again you were DeFi protocols, decentralized storage, whatever it is, DAOs as the other elements of decentralization are evolving. And at the end of the day, this is basically the only way to actually implement full decentralization by letting the people govern. And those complicated governance systems, which we are experimenting with, right? Like, I mean, even democracy is an experiment, right? Even not that much of an efficient one. We will keep evolving as humans towards the best way to govern and socialize and take decisions in a proper way. So Factor could be a place where you can actually implement the DAO. And again, a DAO could control whatever it is. And you can help them by utilizing their fund, which is the resource through infrastructure. So now I can take decisions, I can create organizations, and I can utilize the resources, both the human capital, i.e., whoever is participating in the DAO, and financial resources, the funds that they collected, the revenue that they are generating, and put this whole thing under one single roof. And this is something we really look forward to.
So I was right. You are a mad professor, but in the best possible way. I think. I mean, those are big dreams, but they're dreams that are very much in line with the true essence of what DeFi has to offer. You know, there are those gifts, you know, that are in the streets of DeFi, and I think you touched on pretty much all of them. And I mean, I can only wish you guys all the luck in the world. I mean, I could think of nothing better than to see even half of those those goals and those dreams be realized within this protocol, because they are very important. They are very much the fundamentals of, you know, what this whole experiment is actually all about. And hopefully, you know, we come out the other side with a lot of that stuff intact. I mean, like you said, you know, we still figuring things out, but you guys get to do that now. You have this luxury. You've worked hard. You've managed to raise a whole lot of money, which you can now put to use in order to craft this thing, you know, this whatever it might be. The ideas are there. The vision is there. I mean, I wish you guys all the best. I look forward to checking in with you again in the near future, just to see how, you know, how these vaults are coming along, how your strategies, or rather the partners that are coming in, and how their strategies are coming to fruition. I think Blockmates needs to also look at this in terms of what it is that, you know, we could possibly do within the ecosystem. But yeah, Kurapika, thanks for your time today. It's been really cool to get to the essence of Factor. I mean, I think our first interview, it was really cool to hear about it, but I think today's interview was really cool to almost touch and feel the product, you know. Like, it really did feel like that was what happened in today's talk. And yeah, we'll keep an eye on what you guys are doing, and really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. First of all, you, Jedi, you've been amazing, and I really loved the first interview, and now, like, the questions are very well thought, and the conversation is very fluid, and I love it. And for the audience, I mean, I invite you all to the Discord server where we have daily updates, which means that, like, it's a very important thing for a team to further communicate, because, as you mentioned, failures will happen, mistakes will happen. We need to communicate it and work together in order to solve them. Like, we're still, until when we implement a smart contract, obviously it's immutable, but before we do it, we need to make sure that anyone are aligned, and we are able to really check put, and we're still humans, all of us, whether it's the team, the DAO participants, the stakers, whoever it is. So the first thing in line is candidacy, transparency, and communication. And this is really what we're trying to do with these interviews, with the Discord server. So you're all welcome to give a visit and just learn more. So thank you so much, man.
Yeah, great. And to the listeners, please like and subscribe. We do appreciate it, and we appreciate it when you guys do that. I will be putting links below for, you know, the threads that were mentioned in the interview, and then I'll also obviously link Factor's Discord server, their Twitter account, and all those details. Yeah, take it easy.